on Book TV. Since the late 1950s, V.S. Naipaul's writings have dealt with the cultural confusion of the Third World and the problems of an outsider. Next, the 2001 Nobel laureate in literature returns to familiar ground, reading from his latest novel, Half a Life, about an Indian-born writer in the 1950s and his journey in search of an identity. During this hour-long event from the Inter-American Development Bank Cultural Center in Washington, D.C., Mr. Naipaul also touches on his controversial views regarding what he calls half-made societies.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Before we begin with the program tonight, I would like to remind you to turn off all the beepers, cell phones, and pagers. Mr. Naipaul's books are available in the back of the atrium, and after his presentation, he will be glad to sign the books. But I had to advise you not to ask for personalized autographs. I assume that all of you have picked up a yellow card in which there is a space for a question. If you wish to formulate one, you should write it down and take it to the back of the atrium. There is a box placed in the back of the atrium where you can drop your question. Out of the box, 10 questions will be selected by Mr. Naipaul's publicist. And now to present Mr. Naipaul, it is my pleasure to introduce Mrs. Mirna Liévano de Marquez, External Relations Advisor of the Inter-American Development Bank.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Inter-American Development Bank and our partner in this event, Olson's book, I would like to welcome you this evening to hear the Trinidad-born British writer Sir V.S. Naipaul present his latest book, Half a Life. Sir Naipaul is considered the leading novelist to emerge from the English-speaking Caribbean. He has won most of the world's leading English language literary prizes, not the least of which is this year's Nobel Prize for Literature. His work in more than 25 books range from short stories to novels, histories, and travel writings. His earliest books take place in the West Indies. In his major success, A House of Biwas, published in 1961, he describes England after the loss of its empire from the perspective of an Indian immigrant modeled on his father. He has turned to his own life for material, writing of his exodus from Trinidad to England, where he received at Oxford a BA. Such works in the engine of arrival. His skill in transforming rage into precision was noted by the Nobel panel in such books as Among the Believers, a study of the Islamic religion published in 1981. Critics have written that Naipaul consistently knocks down idealized views of the places he journeys to, such as England, Trinidad, or Africa, in favor of a complex, sometimes contradictory truth. Along the way, he has endured much criticism for his dissonant portrayals of India and the Caribbean. He is a master of English prose style who is known for his studies of alienation, an individual sense of being on the outside of society, as well as the impact of colonialism and nationalism on the third world. We are delighted to present you this evening Servidia and look forward to your remarks. Everyone, please join me in welcoming Sir V.S. Naipaul.
Before we begin, I would like to find out whether this is all right. Are the microphones working well? Okay. I'm going to read a segment of my new book, and it's about a dinner party in London in 1956. The main character of my book is an Indian of mixed parentage. The mixed parentage is caste. Father is a man of the upper caste, and the mother is someone of a lower caste, but of a quite rebellious lower caste. And for such a person, at the period in which I'm writing, there was very little way ahead for him. So Willie somehow, through his father's influence, his father has become a kind of charlatan guru, holy man, founder of an ashram. Through that father's influence, Willie gets a scholarship in London at a college of education for older students. He comes to London, and there he becomes friendly with an English lawyer called Roger. Roger's style overwhelms Willie. Actually, it's the style of Roger's school and university and profession and family. But Willie sees all these characteristics in Roger as personal to Roger. And it's Roger who is giving the dinner party. Remember, it's set in 1956, and any ethnic or other kinds of overtones you hear belong to the period. Roger said one day, "My editor is coming to London soon. You know, I do him a weekly letter about books and plays for his provincial paper. I also drop the odd word about cultural personalities. He pays me £10 a week. I suppose he's coming to check on me. He says he wants to meet my friends. I've promised him an intellectual..."
Excuse me.
Yes.
I think you should stand up and read. They can't hear you on that.
They can't hear me?
Not properly on this side. So if you stood and read,
Yes.
it would be better. You'd reach out.
Okay.
It would be better. Let's test the mic here. No. It's better if you stand.
Yes.
They can see you and they can
Yes.
read.
Yes. Can you hear me here? Is it all right? Is it better? Okay. Well, we'll go back to the beginning then. It's about the dinner party in London in 1956. And we begin with Roger, an English lawyer, talking to Willie, who is the leading figure of the new book. Willie, who is Indian, of mixed parentage. Roger said one day, "My editor is coming to London soon. You know, I do him a weekly letter about books and plays. I also drop the odd word about cultural personalities. He pays me £10 a week. I suppose he's coming to check on me. He says he wants to meet my friends. I promised him an intellectual London dinner party, and you must come, Willie. It will be the first party in the Marble Arch house." That's a house that Roger's been doing up. "I will present you as a literary star to be. In Proust, there's a social figure called Swann. He likes sometimes, for his own pleasure, to bring together dissimilar people, to create a social nosegay, as he says. I'm hoping to do something like that for the editor. There'll be a Negro I met in West Africa when I did my national service. He's the son of a West Indian who went to live in West Africa as part of the Back to Africa movement. His name is Marcus, after the black crook who founded the movement. You'll like him. He's very charming, very urbane. He's dedicated to interracial sex and is quite insatiable. When we first met in West Africa, his talk was almost all about sex. To keep my end up, I said that African women were attractive. He said, if you like the animal thing. He's now training to be a diplomat for when his country becomes independent. The date of this, you must remember, is 1956. And to him, London is paradise. He has two ambitions. The first is to have a grandchild who will be pure white in appearance. He's halfway there. He has 5 mulatto children by 5 white women, and he feels that all he has to do now is to keep an eye on the children and make sure they don't let him down. He wants, when he's old, to walk down the King's Road with this white grandchild. People will stare, and the child will say loudly, "What are they staring at, grandfather?" His second ambition is to be the first black man to have an account at Coutts. That's the Queen's Bank. Willie said, "Don't they have black people?" Roger said, "I don't know." I don't think he really knows either. Willie said, "Why doesn't he just go to the bank and find out? Ask for a form?" Roger said he feels they might put him off in the discreet way. They might say they've run out of forms. He doesn't want that to happen. He will go to Coutts and ask to open an account only when he's sure that they'll take him. He wants to do it very casually, and he must be the first black man to do it. It's all very involved, and I can't say I understand it, but you'll talk to him about it. He's quite open. It's part of his charm. There'll also be a young poet and his wife at the dinner. You should have no trouble with them. They will look disapproving and say absolutely nothing, and the poet will be waiting to snub anyone who talks to him, so you don't have to say anything to him. He's actually quite well known. My editor will be very pleased to meet him. In a foolish moment, I wrote a friendly paragraph about one of the poet's books in a London letter. That's the name of my column. And word somehow got back to the poet. That's how I've been landed with him. Willie said, "I know about silent people. My father was always on a vow of silence. I'll look the poet up." Roger said, "It won't give you any pleasure. The poetry is complicated and showing off and perfectly arid. And you can think for some time, you can think for years, that it's your fault it's like that." That's how I was taken in. Look him up if you want, but you mustn't feel you have to do it before the dinner. I'm asking the poet and his wife only for the nosegay effect. A little bit of dead fern to set the whole thing off. The people you should study are 2 men I've known since Oxford. They're both of modest middle-class backgrounds, and they pursue rich women. They do other things, of course, but this is actually their career. Very rich women. It began in a small way at Oxford, and since then they've moved up and up, higher and higher, to richer and richer women. Their standards of wealth in a woman are now very high indeed. They're bitter enemies, I need hardly say. Each thinks the other is a fraud. It's been an education to see them operate. They both, at about the same time in Oxford, made the discovery that in the pursuit of rich women, the first conquest is all important. It piques the interest of other rich women who might otherwise pay no attention to a middle-class adventurer, and it brings these women into the hunter's orbit. Soon, the competition is among the rich women, each claiming to be richer than the others. Richard, he's one of the two, is ill-favored and drunken and loud and getting fat. Not the kind of man you would think women would be attracted to. He wears grubby tweed jackets and dirty Viella shirts. But he knows his market, and some of that coarseness is an act and is part of his bait. He presents himself as a kind of Bertolt Brecht, the promiscuous and smelly German communist playwright. But Richard is only a bedroom Marxist. Marxism takes him to the bedroom, and Marxism stops in the bedroom. All the women he seduces know that. They feel safe with him. It was like that in Oxford, and it's still like that. The difference is that at Oxford, it thrilled his common soul just to sleep with rich women, and now he takes large sums of money off them. Of course, he's made his mistakes. I imagine there's been more than one bedroom confrontation. I imagine a half-dressed lady saying tearfully, "I thought you were a Marxist." I imagine Richard pulling on his trousers fast and saying, "I thought you were rich." Richard is in publishing, quite rich now, and rising fast. As a publisher, his Marxism makes him more attractive than ever. The more he takes off the ladies, the more other ladies rush to give him. Peter's style. Peter's the other fellow. Peter's style is entirely different. His background is more modest, country estate agent. That's selling houses and property. And at Oxford, Peter began to develop his English gentleman style. Oxford is full of young foreign women studying English at various language schools. Some of them are rich. Peter, by some instinct, ignored the university women and chose to operate among these people. They would have thought him the genuine article, and he, quicker than they, learning soon to sort the wheat from the chaff, scored some notable successes. He was invited to 2 or 3 rich European houses. He began to meet rich people on the continent. He cultivated his appearance. He began to wear his hair in a kind of semi-military style, rising flat above the ears, and he learned to work his lantern jaws. One day, in the junior common room, that's where the students in a college meet. One day in the junior common room, when we were having bad coffee after lunch, he said to me, "What would you say is the sexiest thing a man can wear?" I was taken aback. This wasn't typical common room conversation, but it showed how far Peter had got from estate agenting and where he was going. He said at last, "The sexiest thing a man can wear is a very clean and well-ironed white shirt." A French girl he'd slept with the night before had told him that, and he's worn nothing but white shirts ever since. They're very expensive now, handmade, very fine 2-ply or 3-ply cotton, the collar fitting close to his neck and rising well above the jacket at the back. He likes them starched in a certain way so that the collar looks waxed. He's an academic, a historian. He's written a little book about food and history, an important subject, but a scrappy little anthology of a book. And he talks about new books and big advances from publishers, but that's only for show. His intellectual energy has actually become very low. The women consume him. To satisfy them, he's developed what I can only describe as a special sexual taste. Women talk. Never forget that, Willie. And word of this taste of Peter's has spread. It is now part of his success. Peter's academic interests have always reflected the women he's been involved with. He's become a Latin American expert. And now he's got a great prize, a Colombian woman. Colombia is a poor country, but she's connected to one of those absurd Latin American fortunes that have been created out of 4 centuries of Indian blood and bones. She's coming with Peter, and Richard will be tormented by the most exquisite jealousy. He won't take it quietly. He will do something, create some fierce Marxist scene. I'll arrange it that you talk to the lady. That's our nosegay, our little dinner party for 10. On another day, Roger said, "My editor wants to stay with me. I've told him the house is very small, but he says he grew up in poverty and knows about back-to-back houses. The house really has only a bedroom and a half. The editor is a very big man, and I suppose I'll have to take the half bedroom or go to a hotel. That'll be unusual. I'll be like a guest at my own dinner party." The house was in a short side street off Marble Arch. It was low and narrow and flat. On the day, Willie knocked and waited for some time at the little door. At last, Perdita, Roger's girlfriend, let him in. The editor was already there. He was very fat, with glasses, bursting out of his shirt, and Willie felt it was his shyness and unwillingness to be seen that had made him not want to stay at a hotel. He seemed to take up a lot of room in the house, which, in spite of all the little tricks of the architect, was really very small. Roger, oppressed-looking, came up from the basement and did the introductions. The editor remained sitting down. He said he saw Mahatma Gandhi in 1931, when the Mahatma came to England for the Round Table Conference, one of those conferences about Indian independence. The editor said nothing else about the Mahatma, whom Willie and his mother's uncle despised for caste reasons. And the editor said nothing about the Mahatma's clothes or the Mahatma's appearance. He spoke only of seeing him. When Marcus, the West Indian West African, came, the editor told in a similar way about seeing Paul Robeson. Marcus looked confident and humorous and full of zest, and as soon as he began to talk, Willie was captivated. Willie said, "I've been hearing about your plans for a white grandchild." Marcus said, "It's not so extraordinary. It will only be repeating something that happened on a large scale here 150 years ago. In the 18th century, there were about 500,000 black people in England. They've all vanished. They disappeared in the local population. They were bred out. The Negro gene is a recessive one. If this were more widely known, there would be a good deal less racial feeling than there is. And a lot of that feeling is only skin deep, so to speak. I'll tell you the story. When I was in Africa, I got to know a Frenchwoman from Alsace. She said after a time that she wanted me to meet her family. We went to Europe together and went to her hometown. She introduced me to her school friends. They were conservative people, and she was worried about what they would think. In the 2 weeks I was there, I screwed them all, but my friend was still worried. The poet, when he came, received his homage from the editor, and then he and his wife sat sullenly together in one corner of the little room. The Colombian woman was older than Willie expected. She might have been in her late 40s. Her name was Serafina. She was slender, delicate, worried-looking. Her hair was black enough to suggest a dye, and her skin was very white and powdered up to the hair. When eventually she came and sat next to Willie, she said, "Do you like ladies?" When Willie hesitated, she said, "Not all men like ladies. I know. I was a virgin until I was 26. My husband was a pederast. Colombia is full of little boys you can buy for $1. Willie said, "What happened when you were 26? She said, I'm telling you my life story, but I'm not in the confessional. Obviously, something happened. When Perdita and Roger began to pass the food around, she said, I love men. I think they have a cosmic strength. Willie said, you mean energy? She said with irritation, I mean cosmic strength. Willie looked at Peter. He had prepared for the evening. He was wearing his expensive-looking white shirt with the starched, waxy collar high at the back. His semi-military blonde and grey hair was flat at the sides, with just a touch of pomade to keep it in order. But his eyes were dim and fatigued and far away. Roger, passing with food, said, why did you marry a pederast, Serafina? She said, we are rich and white. Roger said, that's hardly a reason. She ignored that. She said, we have been rich and white for generations. We speak classical Spanish. My father was this white and handsome man. You should have seen him. It is hard for us to get married in Colombia. Willie said, aren't there other white people in Colombia? Serafina said, it is a common word for you here. It isn't for us. We are rich and white in Colombia, and we speak this pure old Spanish, purer than the Spanish they speak in Spain. It is hard for us to get husbands. Many of our girls have married Europeans. My younger sister is married to an Argentine. When you have to look so hard and so far for a husband, you can make mistakes. Richard, the publisher, called out from across the room, I would say it's a mistake, leaving Colombia and going to live on stolen Indian land. Serafina said, my sister has stolen no land. Richard said, it was stolen for her 80 years ago by General Roca and his gang. The railway and the Remington rifle against Indian slings and stones. That's how the Pampas were won, and all those bogus smart estancias. So your sister moved from old plunder to new theft. Thank God for Eva Perón, I say, pulling down the whole rotten edifice. Serafina said to Willie, this man is trying to make himself interesting to me. It is a common type in Colombia. Marcus said, I don't think many people know that there were large Negro populations in Buenos Aires and Uruguay in 1800. They disappeared in the local population. They were bred out. The Negro is recessive. Not many people know that. Richard and Marcus carried on the crossroom talk. Richard always moving around what Marcus said and aiming to be provocative. Serafina said to Willie, he is the kind of man who will try to seduce me as soon as he's alone with me. It is boring. He thinks I'm Latin American and easy. She went silent. Through all of this, Peter remained perfectly calm. Willie, no longer having to listen and idly looking around the room, let his eyes rest on Perdita, Roger's girlfriend, and her long upper body. At the same time, he thought of June, the friend of a friend, undressing in the room in Notting Hill. Perdita caught his gaze and held it. Willie was inexpressibly stirred. Roger and Perdita began clearing away the plates. Marcus, in his brisk, zestful way, got up and began to help. Coffee and brandy came. Serafina said absently to Willie, have you felt jealousy? Her thoughts had been running along ways he didn't know. Willie said, not yet. I've only felt desire. She said, listen to this. When I took Peter to Colombia, the women all ran to him, this English gentleman and scholar with a strong jawline. After 1 month, he forgot everything I had done for him, and he ran away with somebody else. But he didn't know the country, and he made a big mistake. The woman had fooled him. She was a mestiza, and she wasn't rich at all. He found out in a week. He came back to me and begged to be forgiven. He knelt on the floor and put his head in my lap and cried like a child. I stroked his hair and said, "You thought she was rich? You thought she was white?" He said, "Yes, yes." I forgave him, but perhaps he should be punished. What do you think? The editor cleared his throat once, twice. It was his call for silence. Serafina, turning away from Willie and looking away from Richard, sat up straight and fixed her gaze on the editor. He sat big and heavy in his corner, overflowing the waistband of his trousers, his shirt pulling at every button. He said, "I don't think any of you here can understand what an occasion this evening has been for a provincial editor. You have each one of you given me a glimpse of a world far removed from my own. I come from a smoky old industrial town in the dark, satanic north of the country. Not many people want to know about us nowadays, but we have played our part in history. Our factories made goods that went all over the world, and wherever our goods went, they helped to usher in the modern age. We quite rightly thought of ourselves as the center of the world. But now the world has tilted, and it is only when I meet people like yourselves that I get some idea where the world is going. So this occasion is full of ironies. You have all led glittering lives. I've heard of some of you by report, and everything I've seen and heard here tonight has confirmed what I've heard. I wish from the bottom of my heart to thank you all for the great courtesy you've shown a man whose life has been the opposite of glittering. But we who live in dark corners have our souls. We've had our ambitions, we've had our dreams, and life can play cruel tricks on us. Perhaps in this neglected spot is laid some heart once pregnant with celestial fire. I cannot hope to match the poet Gray, and the poet comes from Gray's famous poem, The Elegy in a Country Churchyard, the line, "I can't match the poet Gray, but I have written in my own way," the editor said, "of a heart like that. And I would like now, with your permission, and before we separate, perhaps forever, to make you an offering of what I have written." From the inner breast pocket of his jacket, the editor took out some folded sheets of newsprint. Deliberately, in the silence he had created, looking at no one, he shook out the sheets. He said, "These are galleys, newspaper proofs. The copy itself has been long prepared. A word or two may be changed here and there, an awkward phrase or two put right, but by and large, it is ready for the press. It will be printed in my paper in the week of my death. You will guess that it is my obituary. Some of you may gasp, some of you may sigh, but death comes to all, and it is better to be prepared." These words were composed in no spirit of vainglory. You know me well enough for that. And it is rather in a spirit of sorrow and regret for all the might have been that I invite you now to contemplate the course of an obscure provincial life. The editor began to read. Henry Arthur Percival Summers, who became editor of this paper in the dark days of November 1940, and whose death is reported more fully on another page, was born the son of a ship's fitter on 17 July 1895. Stage by stage then, galley by galley, one narrow column of print to a galley, this editor unfolded his story. The little house, the poor street, the father's periods of unemployment, family bereavements, the boy leaving school at 14, doing little clerking jobs in various offices, the war, his rejection by the army on medical grounds, and then at last, in the last year of the war, his job in the newspaper, on the production side, as a copy holder, really a woman's job. reading copy aloud to the typesetter. As the editor read, his emotion grew. The poet and his wife looked on aloof and unsurprised and disdaining. Peter was vacant. Serafina held herself upright and showed her profile to Richard. Marcus, mentally restless, thinking of this and that, more than once began to talk about something quite unrelated, and then stopped at the sound of his own voice. But Willie was fascinated by the editor's story. To him it was all new. There were not many concrete details to hold on to, but he was trying as he listened to see the editor's town and to enter the editor's life. He found himself, to his surprise, thinking of his own father, and then he began to think about himself. Sitting beside Serafina, who turned away from him and was stiff, resisting conversation, Willie leaned forward to concentrate on the editor. He, the editor, was aware of Willie's interest, and he weakened. He began to choke on his words. Once or twice he sobbed, and then he was on the last galley. Tears were running down his face. He seemed to break down. He was reading. His deepest life was in the mind, but journalism is by its nature ephemeral, and he left no memorial. Love, the divine illusion, never touched him, but he had a lifelong romance with the English language. It was over. He took off his misted glasses, held the galleys in his left hand, and fixed his wet eyes on a spot on the floor 3 or 4 feet in front of him. There was a great silence. Marcus said, "That was a very nice piece of writing." The editor remained as he had been, looking down at the floor, letting the tears flow, and silence came back to the room. The party was over. When people spoke, saying goodbye, it was in whispers, as in a sick room. The poet and his wife left. It was as though they hadn't been. Serafina stood up, let her gaze sweep unseeing past Richard, and took Peter away. Marcus whispered, "Let me help you clear away Perdita." Willie was surprised by a pang of jealousy, but neither he nor Marcus was allowed to stay. Roger, saying goodbye to them at the door of the little house, lost his worried look. He said mischievously, not raising his voice, "He told me he wanted to meet my London friends. I had no idea he wanted an audience." Thank you.
And now Mr. Naipaul will answer 10 questions selected from the many the audience has deposited in the boxes in the back of the atrium. And the questions have been selected by Mr. Naipaul's publicist.
Vidya, I'll ask you the questions. You can answer them sitting down.
Okay, fine. But can they hear me here?
Well, try now.
Can you hear me? Everybody hear me? No, they can't.
Or you stand, I can sit.
Okay.
Just move it closer to you. Closer to you.
Is this okay for people?
Right.
Is it okay?
Yeah.
There? Yes.
Is that right?
Yes. Okay.
Vidya, the first question is, Caribbean people, especially those of Trinidad and Tobago,
Yes.
are very proud of your accomplishments. The new National Library of that country is being named after you. But it is reported that on receiving the news of the Nobel Prize, you recognized Britain as your home and India as your ancestral land. Would you kindly explain why you did not mention Trinidad, the land of your birth and formative years, and the literary inspiration of many of your books? And it's somebody from the Queen's Royal College, your old college.
Actually, Trinidad was mentioned.
Get nearer.
Is it? Can you hear?
Yeah.
Actually, Trinidad was mentioned. When one is like me with so many loyalties, if you make a list of them, it becomes a kind of carnival. I would end up saying, I got to thank England, where I was able to pursue my writing career, India, which I've given a lot of thought to for 40 years, and then I got to say something like, last but not least, I must not forget where I was born. It becomes absurd. And then I must thank my agent. It goes on like those absurd acknowledgements you get in some books. In the old days, we had one name. Now people have done pages. So I think the Trinidad born is there. It was worked out with the people in Sweden. Trinidad born, British writer. What more could one do?
Actually, you did thank them. All right. Here's the next question. I consider House for Mr. Biswas your greatest novel, a novel of experience. How difficult was it to write Half a Life, a novel of imagination?
It's a good question, but like all one requires quite a bit of time to think about it. I'm not a politician, can't give the replies snap, snap, snap. I have to think about it. In fact, a House for Mr. Biswas, which was written between the ages of 25 and 28, was really a work based on, it's a fantasy based on a child's memory of things. I was very far away. So the quality that book may have has to do with the fact that it's an embroidering on a child's memory. Whereas the last book, of course, there's an acre of experience between that, 1960, and writing something nearly 40 years later. And one's head is absolutely teeming with impressions and ideas and people and everything else. And I assembled many old motifs, lots of little notes I had made at various times, and the main story had occurred to me 25 years before. It's one of these things one carries in one's head. And a lot of the book, in fact, little bits and pieces were noted in 1977 and then in 1990. But it took time to write, not because it was a work of the imagination, but because it's written in a new way. The narrative is, it's direct. They're not the novel writer's way of having scenes with description and dialogue. It's spoken narrative. It's, as it were, mimics the way we would tell a story if we speak it. And this enables one to do wonderful things with time. It was also, in the beginning, quite hard to do. I really felt I was working almost like a film director, mounting a scene, because I was trying, not always consciously, it's the way I write, to fix every scene with a very bright picture, just one bright picture. And so I was working from picture to picture. It took time. This little book took all of, I think, 17 months to write. I don't know whether that helps anybody, because one can't talk about the processes of writing. It's a great mystery. No, you can say anything you want. You can say, I write with a pencil. You can say, I write in the morning, I write in the evening. But it doesn't help the person who is not a writer to understand what has gone on in the writer's mind and how the creation has come. And please understand that for the writer, too, there is often a mystery. The writer doesn't always know. I've just written something to accept this prize. And one of the things I've said there, I think I'm allowed to speak the sentence in advance, was every book has come as a blessing. Every book has amazed me. I didn't know it was there until I began to write it. And that's what I feel about writing, which I have always done intuitively.
Right. Here's another one. A reviewer quotes you as saying that you can no longer understand why it is important to write or read invented stories. Is half a life merely an invented story, or is it allegorical? Is it accidental that Willie Chandran's early novels looked for characters in Hollywood movies and that he was a BBC commentator?
This is where one is being caught out by all these requests for interviews, you see. They go into cyberspace now, and they hang about in the air, and they're thrown back at one. I was making a larger point. Let's deal with that thing about the novel invented stories. I think my own feeling at the moment is that I would prefer to read fact. I feel that the work of imagination, the novel, had its great moment in the 19th century. And I feel all the great works of fiction occurred then, and that we who've come after are following the program laid down by those masters. And I also feel that in an account of literature, the books that matter are the books that are absolutely new. New in form, new in idea, the first person to see the way things could be done in a particular form. I don't think this can be said about the novel in this century, or in the one that's finished. People were borrowing the form and pouring their own material into it. And that is, I like to read original work. What is original, what is new, has always had a special, it's what I like to read. You don't even have to think of novels, you think of the essays of Montaigne. They're completely new. He began doing a very hackneyed thing, writing little essays on the classics, the Latin classics. And then it developed, it became personal, it became about the history around him, it became about the discovery of the New World and cruelty. The book grew on him. And you could say the same thing about Machiavelli. That's new, and that began in the same way. Commentary on Livy's early books about Rome, and it grew and grew and grew, the discourses. I like that with writing, when things are new. I don't like people doing it again. I don't know if does that explain it to some people?
Yes, I'm sure. Now, I have chosen this question deliberately because this is something my husband has been accused of time and time again, and I think this is time to set the record straight. News reports indicate that you are contemptuous of third world countries. Is it true? If so, why?
Well, news reports, the people probably wouldn't have time to read my books, you see. So they would deal with it in that way. And you must remember that I've been writing for a very long time.
Yes.
That when I began in 1960 to travel and to write in this way, this other way of visiting and inquiring and reporting, people had different heroes. So in 1960, I don't see how you can be, if you didn't like Mobutu's Congo, people could make it a racist statement. You didn't like the idea of African independence. If in 1972 you didn't like the the great passions, fruitless passions, that were being aroused in Argentina about the return of Perón, the dictator from Spain. Well, what a storm of controversy that caused. So people wish you to support their own ideas and above all, their own political heroes of the moment. And if you don't, you're accused of being negative or you're accused of being contemptuous, etc. And I don't think the books would have lasted all these years. And please remember, they've lasted 40 years, some of them, if they were untrue or without understanding or compassion, or if they didn't have some value in them. Books don't survive just like that.
Well done.
Thank you.
Right. Were you surprised by the events of September 11?
I'll tell you a secret. When, to appear wise, whenever things like that are asked of one, you must always say, I am not surprised. Whether it's about the Pope being shot at, or whether it's this terrible thing that's happened, you must say, I'm not.
No, that's
but
true.
I was awfully surprised. I was horrified, and I remain horrified, and I am slightly appalled by the lack of a better response in England. The government is good, I feel, in taking a good line, but the people,
English press.
the people are being rather craven about it, really. The idea is, if we do nothing, it will just walk away. And if we do something, we will anger them. We will get angry. So the response there has not been good, I think. The government has been superb. I think the government has behaved very well. But the response in the actual BBC and the newspapers, some of them, not good, not good. I think they could have been better. So I was profoundly surprised, profoundly surprised.
Right. Do you see democracies taking root in countries someday where Islamic fundamentalism has squashed any individual thought or opinion? It's a good question.
Yes, it's a good question. It will become rather like, there was Algeria, and there was an Islamic party, and of course the votes went to it completely, and it was going to be what the future of that country was going to be what is said about certain African countries. One man, one vote, once. And I think that would have been, that would be the truth about that, really. Because the democratic way is not part of the Islamic tradition. Islam began with having a strong ruler who combined both roles, the spiritual and the political. And ever since then, the political rulers have been claiming to be also spiritual leaders. I think in Pakistan, General Zia tried that and has set Pakistan on this way to, I don't know, intellectual nullity, really.
Where on the planet do you consider now to be areas of darkness?
God, listen, again, I have to think very carefully about that. I'm worried, very worried about Indonesia. I'm extremely worried about Iran. I think they've got to live now with their religious revolution and all the unhappiness that is brought to a certain segment of the population, and a creative segment. They will have to live with that for the foreseeable future. I'm worried about Pakistan. They haven't made a go of it, and they have dismantled the good institutions that were left them by the British after just 90 years. They've taken them away, they've taken them down. So these are some places that I know about. I'm very concerned about the Congo, the Belgian Congo. But we can go on. This is the most fruitless kind of listing. The question probably is tendentious in some way.
All right. Right. Do you support the American war on terrorism?
Well, I do. I just wish I could have it restated that it really is a war on all terrorism, if it wishes to eradicate terrorism from everywhere. But I'm not sure that it is, because if you wish to eradicate terrorism, you can't have an ally who is in a way the paymaster of many of these unsettling movements. And you can't have another ally who provides the foot soldiers of this movement. So I think the whole thing has already been compromised as a war on terrorism. It's probably something else.
Right. Please describe how your latest novel, Half a Life, relates to the rest of your work. Do you see it as a summing up of your career or a new direction for your work?
A writer must never review himself. That is for other people to say and other people to yes.
Right, this is the last question.
Yes.
In Half a Life, you create a character in Willie who lives an almost parallel existence to your own. Willie comes from a community on the edge of the Indian mainstream, and you from a periphery of a colonial empire. In Willie, have you created a character of what would have been you if you hadn't found your center? Long-winded question.
This, in a way, undoes all the hard work I had making it up a little bit, doesn't it? But years ago, I wrote that the novelist, when he's doing his work, writing novels, doing fiction, splits himself, aspects of himself, gives aspects to all his characters. And that gives the work a kind of closed intensity, which is necessary for books. A book must have that kind of intensity. So to say that Willie is partly me, that would be quite true, but there are 25 different ways in which it's not true. I hope that will do.
Just stay there. I'm going to announce how to sign the book.
Okay.
Please remain seated while I make an announcement. Mr. Naipaul will be glad to sign some books, so I will ask the public to do this in the most orderly possible way. Excuse me.
Yes.
The line will begin in the east side of the atrium, meaning this side.
They can just keep coming.
Signally.
Are they going to bring the books here?
The line should go throughout the colonnade, all around the atrium.
So I would like to have the first one.
And people will exit through the east side, through the art gallery of the cultural center. Will be people guiding those who want to exit through the gallery. Thank you very much. Oh, I forgot to mention that please open the book in the title page, so Mr. Naipaul won't lose any time signing the books. Have the book ready, open in the title page of the book.
Yes, if you can just come up
Thank you.
and open the
Thank
books,
you.
please
Thank you.
open the books.
Maybe I'll go on. Should I go on that side?
V.S. Naipaul won the Booker Prize in 1971 for his work In a Free State and is the 2001 Nobel Laureate in Literature. His latest novel is Half a Life. It's published by Knopf. To find out more, visit them on the web at aaknopf.com.